Hi, I'm Dan Pertu. For this latest episode in my Muse in Music blog, I am so excited to be interviewing conductor Devin Hughes. Highly regarded for his exhilarating score interpretations, advocacy for music accessibility, innate passion, and entrepreneurial vigor, Devin is an American orchestral and operatic conductor of Irish and Guatemalan descent. He is concurrently serving as music director and conductor of the Boulder Symphony and Arapahoe Philharmonic. Previously, he has held artistic leadership positions with the Northwest Florida Symphony Orchestra, Santa Fe Youth Symphony Association, Denver Young Artists Orchestra, and Denver Philharmonic Orchestra. Devin was recently invited to the Antal conducting competition and featured in Maestro, the Schulte International Conducting Competition, as a semifinalist in Budapest. He was the only American selected with 11 other conductors worldwide to compete in the Toscanini International Conducting Competition and was a conducting fellow at the American Academy of Conducting in Aspen. He has conducted orchestras across North America and Europe, including the Winnipeg Symphony, Colorado Symphony, Des Moines Symphony, Fort Wayne Philharmonic, Rochester Philharmonic, San Antonio Symphony, Green Bay Symphony, Philharmonica Arturo Toscanini, and the Orchestra of the Hungarian State Opera. Looking forward to talking now with Devin Hughes. So I'm so excited to be interviewing now Devin Hughes from the Boulder Symphony and the Arapahoe Philharmonic, where he is the music director of those orchestras. And so excited to hear about his listening list for quarantine now. Obviously we live in some times I never imagined I'd be going through, which I suppose maybe I was naive, but you sort of get used to normal life and then this happens and it's just really quite awful. So we're adapting to, trying to figure out how to keep the listening experience alive. And I've been interviewing people and getting their picks for, what do they recommend for people who are, a lot of us are just still stuck at home, even though things are getting better, maybe. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's Dan. Dan, it's great to be here. Excited to speak with you today, and I've enjoyed kind of checking out some of your music as well. So clearly, you're a established composer with your music getting played all over the place, it's always great to be able to meet someone like you. Yeah, the pandemic has been crazy. I mean, I think I started, listening to Bruckner symphonies
Oh,
when the pandemic started. And then it was a lot of smaller works. I discovered a lot of composers, like for example Jenny Brandon, Barbara Harbach, just Hannah Kendall, thinking outside the box in terms of how orchestras can program, whether it be living room concerts that we've been doing, or woodwind quartet concerts outside at a restaurant. Yeah, this has really opened my eyes to a lot of great string repertoire as well. Of course, there's the Tchaikovsky Serenade, the Elgar Serenade, the Holberg Suite, the Dvorak Serenade. But there's a lot of great music. Like for example, I'm conducting the Philip Glass Symphony Number 3 next month.
wow.
Uh,
Okay.
Philip Glass, I think, is just somebody who is overlooked sometimes
Yeah.
and oft neglected. Uh, and he inspires strong feelings. I was at a distillery fundraiser last night, and I was talking to a music teacher who was going to the Met to see 4 operas coming up.
Yeah.
And she was talking about seeing, I think, Einstein on the Beach or Kepler, or some opera in England. And she was just like, my friend just said she never has any thoughts about anything, and she just said she had to leave right away. And I think, and I don't feel that way about Philip Glass's music, but I think that kind of response, like that's what music is designed to do.
Mhm.
It's like take the greatest example in the history of music, the Rite of Spring premiere in 1913, where it actually caused fights in the audience, and the dancers could barely even hear the orchestra to be at the right time in the music because of the shouting and in the calls and the ruckus in the audience. So yeah, I'm looking forward to preparing that symphony.
I just
Some of the
wanted to,
things. Oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry, I just wanted to jump in here because you outlined a lot of different things that I wanted to hear more about before you get farther with some of the other stuff. Um, First, you said I started with Bruckner, and I'm thinking, okay, that's interesting. what what made you want to start with Bruckner? And then I want to hear about Jenny Brandon and Barbara Harbach and stuff. So,
Well, Bruckner is a composer that I've kind of come back to at difficult moments in my life, just throughout my life.
mhm,
The spirituality that he brings,
mhm.
the ability to kind of bring everything together in a way that unites people's souls at the deepest level, no matter what symphony you're listening to. And we know that he spent most of his life sitting at an organ, in a cathedral. Um, and these great structures in Europe and other places are built um, to bring one closer, to whatever deity or creator. I mean, they're sacred places, and Bruckner can create that. I think um, on a musical level. So naturally, in a time where we're looking for answers, I feel that music, and some music more than others, music can provide those answers because most of the best questions go unanswered, no matter what happens. So, and music always is energizing those questions, and providing you that kind of solace that that I discovered in music at a very young age, that I made it my life to want everybody else to be able to experience that.
So which Bruckner symphonies in particular were you listening to that, you know?
I'm a particular fan of course, the ninth, the seventh, the fifth.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I think all of them are wonderful. The sixth is amazing. I mean, the eighth is another favorite of mine. I would start, yeah, if people are looking for a way into Bruckner, I would maybe start with the fourth, then the eighth, then the seventh, then the ninth, and then go from there.
No, but it's good that you put it in some kind of order because, frankly, sometimes Bruckner can be a hard nut to crack for some people just because, um, well, it's very long, for one thing. And wow, I was wondering if you were going to say the fourth. I find the fourth also to be one of the most accessible in terms of a way in. And the eighth is just so monumental. It's great. But I see your point very much with respect to people are looking for answers. People are looking for um, or some solace or comfort or some way to channel all the difficult emotions at this time. I mean, I've in talking with some of the other people on my blog, these themes have come up a lot actually, where people are talking about their listening lists and what they're doing with music, and how am I using music to almost as a form of therapy right now, at these very difficult times. So thank you for sharing your Bruckner set.
Yeah, yeah, and I would add the caveat that all of these symphonies are kind of like, okay, so if I ended up conducting the third symphony, I would probably put that to the top of my list. Like I've experienced that with Mahler too. It's like, okay, I've conducted the first symphony, that's the best symphony, and then I conducted the fourth symphony, and that's the best symphony, and then the fifth symphony, that's actually that's very close to the best symphony. But then I did the seventh symphony, some symphony that I saw the LA Phil do a rehearsal years ago, with a Webern piece to open it. And I didn't think much of it. It was just a rehearsal, and I went and bought a mini score at a bookstore like right before the rehearsal. Um, but then I conducted it maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and that's now my favorite symphony. I mean, so it's like it's hard to. I mean, that's the great thing about the world that we live in. I feel that you could live 100 lifetimes, and many works would still be undiscovered.
Yeah, which is, I mean, it's wonderful that there's this um, great, what's the word, abundance of music out there. So, and but music for all sorts of purposes and seasons. And no, that's great. I wanted to ask you then a little bit more about Jenny Brandon and Barbara. Did you say Harbach?
Barbara Harbach, yeah.
Yeah, could you tell us a little more about their music?
Yeah, Jenny Brandon is a fantastic composer who lives in Southern California. She teaches a lot. She gives workshops. She does a lot of this small ensemble and like oboe solo music, bassoon solo music, uh, and she's kind of found a niche in that regard even before the pandemic. So one of the pieces, I think it was her Five Frogs piece, which is based on this old kind of Japanese book. I think 100 Frogs, something like that. And it's just this really great little characterization for principal woodwinds, flute, clarinet, oboe, bassoon. Uh, Showing different aspects of the frog's life. And yeah, it's just the way she writes for the woodwind instruments. I think she's, I kind of think of her as a musician's composer.
Um,
It's very virtuosic, but at the same time quite idiosyncratic for those specific instruments. The colors she gets is not easy to put the music together. It's a great challenge.
mhm.
And yeah, of course, like the bassoon ends up being the bullfrog, for example. And there's a horn that plays these beautiful melodies, with this floating kind of on the lily pad movement. So yeah, I encourage anybody, especially woodwinds, who are soloists who want to get small ensembles together still, to just check out her music.
And was this piece is this piece written for a general audience, or was it also written with kids in mind? Or
It could be. It could be, yeah. I think in our performance we kind of broke it down, and I think we were live streaming, but we only had like I think 30 people in the audience because of restrictions. But it's actually a great point. It could be on a program with Carnival of the Animals, for instance, because it's very programmatic in that way.
very nice. Yeah, and I know that's one of the nicer features about, their hidden advantages to the pandemic, where, for example, I have a 4-year-old, and while I might not have been able to get her to sit still through an entire concert because she's a very crazy 4-year-old, but I have her sit through a shorter piece that is programmatic like this, and there are a lot of people with families out there. There's ways of bridging into people's living rooms and exposing people to stuff they might not have heard or really now enjoyed, because of the live streaming, and then they're able to have that kind of experience. So I think that's really neat. Not saying that the piece is just appropriate for kids, but just saying that I think it's really wonderful to try to take advantage of some of these things and make lemonade out of lemons sometimes when.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you brought that up, because one of the things we did back in October, is we write children's content programming, and so we had a show and we kind of adapted it to be arranged for strings, percussion, guitar, and keyboard. So everybody could wear a mask. We performed it outside, and it was really designed to. I mean, there's a couple characters. We have a 300-year-old composer named Mozart, who's come back to join us and try to show us how much fun his music is. And then there's a snooty von Classicus, who's a very kind of stilty professor, and thinks that music should be really needs to be intellectually understood to be enjoyed. And so they kind of battle it out, but what we get to do is, of course, we play some great string pieces by Vivaldi, Tchaikovsky, and Mozart, but we also perform Old Town Road by Lil Nas X, and
Uh-huh.
we do like a Mozart and Metallica mashup.
Oh, that sounds wonderful though, the way you're able to capitalize upon some of these situations where, I guess there are opportunities it's not ideal, certainly the way the quarantine has been, but there are opportunities then for different levels of audience engagement anyway. So, do you want to share some more of your listening list?
Yeah, maybe something that I like to listen to at home. A couple different things because when I'm listening to great music, it's hard for me to disengage from it. So sometimes you need like a what is that called, the background radiation, the cosmic background radiation, just going, just to kind of take your blood pressure down a little bit. So there's a great composer. I think he's been through Colorado a couple times. I think he's in Germany, named Niels Fromm.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but Niels Fromm is he's a trained. He grew up in a household of musicians. He's a trained classical pianist, but he kind of went electronic too. So he incorporates these amazing electronic sounds into piano performance and acoustic performance. And I would encourage anyone to just who likes music that's just kind of in the background for studying, for meditating, for doing chores around the house, just you know calm everybody down if you ever need that. And who would need that these days, right?
Oh, I need to look that up because I'll tell you, sometimes I might get out of a contentious meeting or something, and I'm like,
Yeah, yeah.
you know that feeling, right? And it's like I need to take a walk somewhere and just get out of my office or whatever, right? So I'm definitely going to look that up because I'm not familiar with that, and totally hear what you're saying there.
And and
Or
and the, oh, and I would just add a couple other pieces as long as we're talking about stuff that is not affiliated with my job. Happy by Pharrell is like always going to get your spirits up. I don't know if you're familiar. You have a 4-year-old. You might be familiar with it.
yeah,
It's from Despicable Me, but and then there's another song that actually we did a woodwind arrangement for called Tico Tico no Fuba. It's a
uh-huh,
Brazilian song.
okay,
And I found a couple of different arrangements. Of course, it's my favorite version is with full orchestra. There's a short clip of the Berlin Philharmonic playing it. But it's a Brazilian song. It's roughly translated to like sparrow in the cornmeal, and it's just a really cool like salsa song. And like at first the farmer discovers the sparrow there, and he's really upset about it, and then the sparrow ends up giving him some advice, some romantic relationship advice, and the farmer rejoices. So some really cheesy little thing, but it's such a great piece, and I've been just kind of playing it and trying to find a orchestral arrangement of it too.
oh, that's fun. So again, using music as a way to just escape some of the stress. You happen to be maybe doom scrolling on CNN or whatever you watch, and it's like, oh my God, why did I do that? Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
I need
Then
to.
just have some Niels Fromm ready to go in the background.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. This is great. So, what else would you like to share with your listening list?
What else? Well, of course, one of the things we're doing that's coming up, we're doing some Bjork
Oh, wow.
songs.
Yeah.
And we're going to have this incredible mezzo soprano, Michelle DeYoung.
Uh-huh.
She's going to sing a few of the Bjork songs. Bjork is somebody who I've kind of listened to on and off over the decades. And just kind of getting into her music a bit now, it's really incredible how she brings together, these elements of like electronic dance music with actually classical strings and classical sounds. And
Hmm.
it's something that I hadn't really noticed until hopefully we'll have those arranged, and we have a great electronic music creator and composer named John Clay Allen,
Okay.
um, who actually just released a great album called On the Air. If you're still putting pieces down, but yeah, he'll be arranging those Bjork songs. So I'm really and yeah, it's great to be able to, of course, like do an orchestral premiere, a world premiere with string orchestra or full orchestra. But when you get to like merge different genres like this, and kind of create something out of some classic pop or rock tune. I think that's usually really exciting, not only for the orchestra and performers, but for the audience, and it brings different, audiences with different interests into the concert halls.
I really wanted to ask about that. Yeah, because so you're in Boulder. So Boulder, of course, is it's on definitely on my short list of places I would love to live. Because it's just a super cool place. And I wanted to ask you about yeah, your audience there. I know obviously in the quarantine it's tougher right now, but um so in terms of programming then, so you're sharing some of these really interesting things to listen to, really interesting things for people to open their minds to and get to know. And then you have fusion of genres, right? And different genres that you might not always see together. Um, so can you talk maybe a little about your audience in Boulder? I'm just curious and how, is it are people more into experimental music there because it's just such a cool city, or is it, does it run the range, so to speak, of what people are interested in?
Yeah, I would say Boulder. I think like any city, uh, there's going to be people who like new stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and in Boulder, it's really unique here because we have so many arts organizations, not just music groups, but dance troops, theater troops, etc. And so ever since I've been with the Boulder Symphony, which is probably a little over 10 years now, um, we've tried to kind of position ourselves as an orchestra that's introducing new music. Whether that is successful or not, I would say it's not always successful, but I think the most important thing is that, like we talked about at the beginning of the interview, that we elicit some kind of strong response. Like we want people to feel something. Um, all the greatest pieces that people are in love with now were premieres at one time. Um, I mean,
Yeah.
even Beethoven symphonies were not able to be understood in many instances.
Hmm.
In his string quartets and of course the Ninth Symphony. And you imagine these premieres going off with, you read about the premiere with the chorus and the orchestra getting together the day before, rehearsing all day. I mean, you can
Oh
imagine this
my
was
God.
this must have been a
Nightmare.
disaster.
Yeah.
But they got together for enough time to get the point across, which was what was the intention. So yeah, I would imagine it would be great for Beethoven to maybe hear some of his music 100 years, 200 years later, to see the pristineness that orchestras today can actually play with. I mean, I'm sure he's looking from somewhere. But yeah, I think I mean, Beethoven as a composer created the modern orchestra as we know it.
Mhm.
And he forced it to expand. He forced it to improve. He forced the idea of even a professional ensemble to come together, as opposed to composers just having to ask their friends to put an orchestra together. um, and so that idea, I think, permeates the orchestral world to this day. Um, and when you play a Beethoven symphony, it's not just this repeat of what's been done before. I think it feels like a new thing. It feels like a premiere. So I think that's kind of. I would agree with you that given the sort of tech prominence and I think the creative endeavors that are concentrated in Boulder, Colorado, but also in Denver and this whole area. I think that there's a very rich orchestral scene, and I would say it's not just us. I mean, since there are so many orchestras are really forced to innovate and compete, and I think one of the most important things that I'm involved in is when we have concerts and new music that we're able to bring the composer there, or that the composer is actually a local resident in some way. Because for me, like just the events actually around the concert, whether it be going to some of our partner schools and talking to the kids, or introducing composition sometimes, or giving lessons to the one or two kids who might be composing at that level. But also, doing pre-concert talks, having them engage in events, having them there for the orchestra rehearsal, I feel is the most special thing an orchestra can partake in.
Yeah, and that's really exciting that you do that, and just in general to bring the composer to the community, to enhance the community engagement, to and to enhance, of course, the audience's experience of the piece, and that's wonderful because so often in classical music, um, people have this sort of deified notion of composers, right? They're these, figures and statues, and they're like gods or whatever. And um, I, I always am encouraged to see when um, people nowadays are humanizing
Mhm.
composers and taking them down from that.
Yeah.
So, not just
Yeah.
that there aren't some wonderfully talented people from the past who wrote music. I'm not saying, but I'm just, I think it's nice to have the deification sort of fizzle out.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important to not separate ourselves from this idea of genius. I think that um, that pathway is accessible to a lot more people than we think,
Mm-hmm.
and it's more determined by, Beethoven was in the hotbed of the Enlightenment. Growing up in Bonn,
Yeah,
his father, forced upon him the need to practice in a way that made it so he could improvise anything the rest of his life. So I mean, I think and of course Mozart. His father paraded him around all of Europe, and basically lived vicariously through him, and that resulted in this polyglot little genius who could hear anything and play anything. And so it's a mixture of things. It's not just like this, the Messiah has risen kind of thing. It's really a sociological, geographic, cultural alignment
yeah,
that I agree. Like when people see composers today, like they're writing, they're responding to our world. They're characterizing our world, hopefully in some different way that will allow the audience to change their perspective just a little bit.
sure. Well, that's really wonderful. And considering this context now, I'm even more excited to to listen your listening picks and to get to know all of the different things that you said. Um, so, did you have anything else you wanted to add, or does that about cover what your picks were, or what you wanted to talk?
Oh, other picks. Well, yeah. I mean, I could go on, and I mean, one of the things at the beginning of the pandemic that I also started to rediscover are the late Beethoven quartets, or really all the string quartets. I mean, there's this great Dover edition. You may have it.
Yeah,
That's it's so just I mean, just to play string quartets, and to listen to the great quartets of the world perform them, but also like the Bartok quartets. Um, this is music like the composers don't really have to write, right? This is like a passion project.
mhm,
So yeah, like just learning about and just getting into the music of those two composers, and how that cross references with events in their life. In particular, the Beethoven, the Grosse Fuge. Um, it's such a, I mean, some piece like that, it's almost like, the Rite of Spring, where it sounds, you play it in 2021 and it sounds, it's unable to be deciphered. Like you don't know where the phrases are, you don't know what he's trying to say. I don't know if Beethoven knows what he's trying to say in that piece. And one of the things like that I did because of that is it's like, okay, let's put that into our kids concert, the Grosse with string orchestra. And of course, that makes the players a little upset that they have to put that together. But just to present this piece for a kids concert and just see their reactions, and it's not a negative reaction actually. We asked people who liked it, who hated it, who didn't know, who doesn't know how to feel about it, and almost everybody liked it, who got to listen to it. So yeah, I think something like dissonance and melody, and I think Philip Glass said something like beauty and dissonance are closer than we think. Right. So this idea in our world that consonance or melody or harmony is beautiful, and any sort of dissonance is the opposite of that. I mean, I think that's kind of I think music like Beethoven's Grosse Fuge, for instance, really kind of breaks down that barrier, and I think that's the purpose of music is to break down barriers.
It's a really interesting pick, of course, that I need to go back to that one. I haven't listened to it in quite a while. And, and of course, thinking about, you're talking about dissonance and consonance and all that, that makes me think about all the music theory that I teach and
Yeah.
composition of course. And that's right. I mean, I think Philip Glass is right in that. I would add to say that we really can't experience um, the sweetness of consonance without dissonance. So it's a sort of maybe taking that a step further or putting another spin on it. Because if you don't have tension, then you can't have release, right? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and and definitely excited to go back to listen and maybe I'll play it for my 4-year-old and my 6-year-old now.
That's great. And actually, I should correct something I said earlier. I do think that Beethoven knew what he was saying, because at the premiere, Beethoven went away to the pub. And then one of the string quartet players came because he didn't want to see what, them putting it together. And one of the string quartet players came to tell him afterwards. And the only question he asked was, how did the fugue go? What did you think of the fugue? That's all he cared about. And ultimately, of course, the publisher made him put a different movement into that. So that's why the Grosse Fuge was because it was originally part of one of the other later string quartets.
Mm-hmm.
So Beethoven didn't get his way, but we still got the great fugue out of it. So
That's what an interesting story. That's wonderful. So, well, thank you for that. Well, I really appreciate your taking the time to talk with me today. This has been a fascinating discussion about, um, covering the Grosse Fuge to, Björk.
Beethoven to Björk. That's a great concert title.
Björk and everything in between.
Yeah.
And and I love it. I love when talking about music like this or recommended listening list or whatever, when because there's such a wonderful abundance of music out there, and how we can also cross styles and recognize that people have such divergent tastes, and yet there are ways to build effective bridges and for orchestras to reach various communities. That's absolutely wonderful and very inspiring. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dan, for having me. This is a great thing you got going, and I'm looking forward to hearing about things you're doing in the future.